Today I'm going to show you a segmentation strategy inside Klaviyo that is extremely simple to set up, yet massively effective. And the reason this strategy is so effective is because it aims to address your total engaged database, maximize ROI, and minimize resource output as well. Let me explain why this is very important. The theory is, right, if you look at most storefronts, they're actually well-defined niches within the e-commerce ecosystem, unless they're a big retailer. For example, you sell sleep products, supplements for health and wellness, car parts for vehicles, mattresses. These are all very well-defined niches, and you want to reach as many of these customers as possible when you send out a campaign. And if you hyper segment and you go extremely granular, then often what you're doing is reducing your ability to reach these customers by trying to be too sophisticated and clever. And even if you do decide there's extremely granular cohorts that don't have overlapping interests, then you're actually sometimes doubling or tripling the workload. For example, you decide to send 3 different sets of campaigns, 3 different sets of creatives. That's 3 different strategies that you have to conjure up. This is going to erode your profitability, and this needs to be considered when it comes to your campaign strategy. So never forget that most customers do have overlapping interests. Just because someone is shopping for supplements and they want to build muscle doesn't mean this time next year they don't want to lose fat. Consumer behavior changes, and this segmentation strategy takes that into account by going broad, aiming to reach the maximum possible customers and interactions, and not looking at vanity metrics like click rate. It's looking for total clicks and bringing as much traffic as possible to the website to drive conversions and engagement. Okay, there is obviously exceptions to the rule, but on a high level, that's the theory. So the first thing that you will want to do is set up this master segment inside Klaviyo. Now the master segment is important because this will bring in all your total emailable contacts. And it's a very simple setup. Properties, email is set, and then the person is not suppressed for email. Depending on how you manage consent, you may want to be a little bit stricter here and has subscribed to a list or is in the newsletter list, for example. This way you are able to not email people who may have abandoned a cart and been pulled into Klaviyo, right? Because they will go into a segment, but they haven't explicitly gave you consent to email them. So if you ever want a snapshot of everyone in the database who you can email, again, it depends how you manage consent. This is a very simple starting point. Now, let's go into the actual engaged tier of segments that I usually start with in most accounts. So you can see here, given the change in Apple and the mail privacy protection, there is a few things to consider here. Most segmentation strategies of the past tended to use the open rates to determine engagement, and that was sufficient. However, with the influx of consumer privacy-focused browsers and operating systems, this generally is not as effective as it used to be and just way more unreliable. So what I propose is that you bring in these metrics: placed order at least once in the last 90 days, opened email at least once in the last 90 days, where Apple privacy open equals false, so you don't bring these customers in, or has clicked email at least once in the last 90 days, or has been active on site at least once in the last 90 days, and they are not suppressed for email. Let's just go over why each of these metrics is important. Placed order, pretty straightforward. If someone's placed an order within a time frame, you can generally say they are reasonably engaged. If they've opened an email and it's not an Apple mail privacy protection device, that's also reasonable. But a lot of people don't allow you to actually track opens and the pixels blocked. So for these people, clicks are going to be important. And I see a lot of this on my personal newsletter. People are clicking, but they haven't got an open rate registered, an opened email metric registered, sorry. And active on site, again, pretty standalone, obvious why that would be there. So this is it. It's extremely basic, and it just pulls in the recency of engagement. I would recommend that you expand this net and go from 0 to 30 days, to 0 to 90 days, to 0 180 days, and then include this with the master segment when you need to do really broad campaign targeting. And that's my basic go-to segmentation strategy. You might feel a little bit underwhelmed by that, but actually I'm pretty happy with how simple and effective that is. Remember, your goal with campaigns are to reach as many people as possible, provide as many impressions, and drive the total possible action. You can send to 10,000 people and have a 5% click rate, but what's better if you send to 50,000 people and get a 2% click rate? That broad send will generate more traffic and more action. So there is always exceptions to the rule, and I'm not saying this is black and white, the be all and end all, but on the whole, hopefully you get where I'm coming from. Aim to reach as many people as possible with your marketing, and aim to drive the maximum amount of action rather than being sucked in to vanity metrics.